I discovered early on that my sister Lisa was unique, special, as my parents would say, while I was growing up in our small two-story home. Everything in our home was centered around her fragile health from the day she was born, when I was 6 years old. "Sarah, close that window right now." From downstairs, Mom would yell. "Your sister might catch a cold." This was the soundtrack of my childhood, a constant reminder that Lisa's well-being was everyone's primary concern. I remember the first time I really understood how different our roles would be. I was 12, and Lisa had just started elementary school. She came home one day with a runny nose. Nothing serious, but you'd think she had pneumonia from how my parents reacted. "This is your fault, Sarah." Dad's words cut through me like a knife. "You must have left the door open too long when you went to school this morning." I wanted to argue that Lisa had probably caught it from one of her classmates, like any normal kid would, but I knew better than to speak up. Instead, I just nodded and accepted my punishment of being grounded for the weekend. That same year, Mom started delegating household chores. While other kids my age were playing after school, I was learning how to properly dust furniture, vacuum carpets, and even do laundry. "But Mom, why doesn't Lisa have to help?" I asked one day, watching my sister sprawled on the couch, watching TV, while I folded what felt like mountains of clothes. Mom's response was quick and sharp. "Your sister has a weak immune system, Sarah. The doctors say she shouldn't overexert herself. Besides, you're so good at these things already." That became the pattern of our lives. If something needed doing, I did it. If something went wrong, it was my fault. When Lisa got an A in math in 4th grade, Dad grounded me for a week because I should have helped her study better. When she broke Mom's favorite coffee mug, somehow it was because I should have been watching her more carefully. I remember one particularly frustrating incident when Lisa was 10 and I was 16. She had taken my favorite sweater without asking and spilled juice all over it. When I complained to Mom, she just sighed and said, "Sarah, you should have put it somewhere she couldn't reach it. You know how careless she can be." That was the moment I started dreaming about college, about escape. I threw myself into my studies, knowing that education was my ticket to freedom. Every time I felt overwhelmed by the unfairness at home, I channeled that energy into my schoolwork. My teachers noticed my dedication, and my grades were excellent. But at home, even my academic success was somehow twisted to highlight Lisa's struggles. "See how easy it is for Sarah," Mom would say to Lisa. "You just need to try harder, sweetie." But Lisa never had to try harder because there were always excuses ready for why she couldn't succeed. And I was always there to pick up her slack. The day I graduated high school, everything changed. I had already accepted that college wasn't in my future. We weren't exactly rolling in money, and I figured any savings would go to Lisa's education. I'd been looking at job listings, planning to work at the local diner while taking some community college classes on the side. That evening, after all the graduation ceremonies were done, Mom and Dad called me into the living room. Lisa was sprawled on the couch as usual, playing on her phone. "Sarah, sit down," Dad said, his voice unusually serious. "We need to talk about your future." My stomach clenched. Here it comes, I thought, the lecture about responsibility, about helping the family, about putting my dreams on hold. Mom reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "We've been saving," she said, sliding it across the coffee table. "Ever since you were little." My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a bank statement showing an account in my name with enough money for 4 years at state college. But I thought, I stammered, looking between them and the paper in my hands. "We can see how well you're doing," Mom explained, glancing briefly at Lisa, who was pretending not to listen. And Lisa, well, College might not be in her future. We thought this money would be better spent on you." I was speechless. For the first time in my life, I was getting something that Lisa wasn't. It felt strange, almost wrong after all these years. "But Dad," he added, his tone growing stern, "we need you to promise us something." He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "When you finish college and get a good job, you'll help the family. Don't forget about your sister." "Of course," I said quickly, still stunned by this turn of events. "I promise." Lisa suddenly got up and stormed out of the room, slamming her door upstairs. Mom sighed but didn't follow her, a stark contrast to how they usually coddled her every mood. That fall, I packed my bags and headed to State College, 3 states away. The distance felt like freedom. For the first time in my life, I could open windows without worrying about anyone catching a cold. I could study without being interrupted to help with chores or watch Lisa. 2 months before graduation, I received an offer I couldn't refuse. A position at Anderson & Global, one of the most prestigious firms in the city. The salary was excellent and the opportunity was too good to pass up. When I told my parents, they were surprisingly understanding about me not coming back home. I found a decent apartment not far from the office and settled into my new life. I kept in regular contact with my family, calling them every weekend. Our conversations usually centered around Lisa, how she was still finding herself after high school. Not working, not in college, just existing. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't responsible for fixing that situation. 3 years into my job at Anderson & Global, Mom called with that tone in her voice, the one she always used when she wanted something. I was reviewing quarterly reports when my phone lit up with her name. "Sarah, honey," she began, her voice sweet as honey. "You know Lisa's been having such a hard time finding work." I closed my eyes, already knowing where this was going. "Your company is so successful," she continued. "Couldn't you put in a good word for your sister? Maybe get her a position there. She's very smart, you know that." My stomach twisted into knots. How could I explain that Lisa, who hadn't worked a day in her life and hadn't gone to college, wouldn't make it past the first round of applications at a firm like Anderson & Global? "Well," I said carefully, "we do have some openings. Let me send over the application form so Lisa can see what the requirements are." That evening, I forwarded the standard application form to Lisa's email. The requirements were crystal clear. Bachelor's degree required, proficiency in SAP and Oracle systems, fluent in 2 foreign languages besides English, minimum 5 years of relevant experience preferred. After that, Mom stopped asking about getting Lisa a job at my company. Life went on. I worked hard, got promoted twice, and started building up a decent savings account. The thought of buying my own place began to take shape. No more rent, a place to truly call my own. 2 years later, I decided to visit home for the first time in months. The house looked smaller than I remembered, the paint peeling in places. Lisa was still living there, sprawled on the same couch, scrolling through her phone just like when we were teenagers. Over dinner, I shared my plans. "I've been saving up," I said, pushing my peas around the plate. "I'm thinking about buying an apartment. The market's good right now, and with my credit score, I could get a decent mortgage rate." The table went quiet. Mom and Dad exchanged looks, while Lisa suddenly seemed very interested in her mashed potatoes. A week later, Mom called. Her voice was different this time, worried, almost desperate. "Sarah, honey, we need to talk," she began. "Your father's not doing well. His back is acting up again, and he can't take those extra shifts at work anymore." I listened as she listed their troubles: the leaking roof, outdated plumbing, walls that needed painting. Each problem came with a price tag attached. "We're barely making ends meet," she said, her voice cracking. "And after all we did for you, honey, the college money, giving you a chance at a good life, now it's time for you to help your family. Sarah, we need you there." It was the reminder of my debt to them, the obligation I promised to fulfill all those years ago. The dream of my own apartment seemed to fade with each word my mother spoke. After that phone call, I spent several sleepless nights thinking about my parents' situation. The guilt ate at me. Here I was, planning to buy an apartment while they couldn't even fix their leaking roof. Finally, I made a decision that would change everything. I called Mom back on a Sunday morning. "I've been thinking about what you said," I started, trying to keep my voice steady. "I want to help. I'm going to give you access to my account. You can spend up to $1,500 per month. That should cover the repairs and help with the bills." The silence on the other end lasted so long, I thought we'd lost connection. Then Mom's voice came back, thick with emotion. "Sarah, that's so generous. It's such a large amount. We probably won't even need that much, just enough for the basic repairs and some groceries." I walked her through setting up the access on her phone. "Just remember the limit," I reminded her. $1,500 per month. Of course," she assured me. "We'll be very careful with it." The first few months went smoothly. I was busy at work and barely checked the account activity. But when I did glance at it, I saw modest withdrawals, $700 here, $800 there, mostly hardware stores, grocery shops, and utility payments. It seemed like they were being responsible with the money, just as Mom had promised. But then things started to change. The amounts began creeping up gradually, $900 one month, $1,100 the next. I tried not to worry about it. After all, they were still under the limit, and home repairs could be expensive. Then came the notification that changed everything. I was in a meeting when my phone buzzed with an alert I'd set up for large purchases, 2 charges at Luxe Boutique. I nearly dropped my phone. That couldn't be right. As soon as the meeting ended, I pulled up my account details. There it was in black and white. A $2,000 purchase at one of the most expensive clothing stores in their area. I stared at the screen in disbelief. I'd never even shopped there myself. With my apartment savings goal, I couldn't justify spending that much on clothes. My hands were shaking as I dialed Mom's number. "Mom, I just got a notification about a $2,000 purchase at Luxe Boutique," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "What's going on?" There was a pause, then a nervous laugh. "Oh, well, you know my birthday is coming up next month," she said, her voice unnaturally bright. I saw this absolutely gorgeous dress and I thought, well, I've been feeling so down lately with all our troubles. I just wanted to treat myself a little. "Okay," I said, wanting to avoid an argument. "Just please stick to the limit we agreed on." "Of course, honey," she said quickly. Then added, "By the way, I'm still looking forward to my birthday present from you. You haven't forgotten, have you?" I sat there after hanging up, staring at the account activity on my screen. Something didn't feel right, but I couldn't put my finger on exactly what. This wasn't just about a dress. This was about something else, something I wasn't seeing yet. From there, I started checking my account more regularly, setting up detailed transaction alerts on my phone. What I saw made my stomach churn. The spending pattern was escalating at an alarming rate. Mom had blown past the $1,500 limit like it didn't exist. One month it was $2,000, then $2,500, and before I knew it, some months were hitting $4,000. My savings account, which I'd been nurturing for years with dreams of my own home, was shrinking instead of growing. One evening, After seeing yet another large transaction, I pulled up my account on my laptop and created a spreadsheet. The numbers were right there in black and white. In just a few months, they'd spent more than I had in an entire year. My own monthly expenses were modest: rent, utilities, groceries, and the occasional dinner out with colleagues. I drove a used car, bought my clothes on sale, and packed my lunch most days. Meanwhile, my parents were supposedly spending thousands on what exactly? I decided it was time for a visit. I needed to see these home improvements for myself. "Mom," I said when I called her, "I'm thinking of coming home next weekend. It'll be nice to celebrate your birthday in person, and I'd love to see that dress you bought. Plus, you can show me all the repairs you've done to the house." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When Mom finally spoke, her voice had an edge I'd never heard before. "Oh no, honey, don't come," she said quickly. "I'm not really celebrating my birthday this year. I'm not feeling up to it. But Mom, I haven't been home in months, and I'd really like to see—" "No," she cut me off sharply, then immediately softened her tone. "It's just not a good time, Sarah, but you can send my birthday gift by mail if you like." That call set off every alarm bell in my head. I spent the entire night going through 6 months of bank statements, line by line. The more I looked, the less sense it made. There were charges from stores I knew my mother would never shop at, restaurants that stayed open until 2 a.m., bars I'd never heard of. The home repair expenses were there, but they were tiny compared to everything else. $150 at Home Depot, $200 at a plumbing supply store. These were dwarfed by charges from high-end boutiques, jewelry stores, and electronic shops. Someone had bought a $1,200 smartphone last month. My mother still used the same flip phone she'd had for years, saying she didn't need anything fancy. The pattern started emerging like a picture coming into focus: teenage bars, nightclubs, designer clothing stores, makeup shops, nail salons. These weren't the expenses of my aging parents who could barely make ends meet. These were the expenses of someone else entirely, someone young, someone who liked to party, someone who had expensive taste and no job of their own. "Lisa," the realization hit me like a physical blow. All those times Mom had talked about the leaking roof and broken plumbing, all those guilt trips about helping the family, it had been a smokescreen. My supposedly struggling parents weren't using my money to repair their house. They were funding my sister's extravagant lifestyle. I felt sick to my stomach as I scrolled through transaction after transaction: a $300 spa day, a $500 shopping spree at a designer outlet, $200 bar tabs multiple times a week. This was why Mom didn't want me to visit. There were no major repairs to see, no improvements to show off, just Lisa living it up on my dime while I pinched pennies and put off my own dreams. I spent the next morning rehearsing what I would say, pacing my apartment with my phone in hand. Finally, around noon, I made the call. "Mom," I said as soon as she answered, my voice steadier than I felt, "we need to talk about where my money is really going." There was a long pause on the other end. "What do you mean, honey?" "I think you know exactly what I mean." I took a deep breath. "The bars, the designer clothes, the new smartphone, those aren't your expenses, are they? They're Lisa's." I heard her inhale sharply, then let out a long sigh. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. No more sweet talk, no more pretense. "Well, what did you expect?" she said defensively. "We're family. Lisa needs nice things too. She can't help it if she hasn't found her path yet." "Mom, you lied to me. You told me the money was for house repairs." "We did use some of it for repairs," she interrupted. "But Sarah, you have so much and Lisa has so little. Besides, you owe us. Or have you forgotten who paid for your fancy college education?" I almost laughed. I'd been expecting this, the ultimate guilt card. but I was prepared. Actually, Mom, I ran the numbers last night. Every single expense for the past 2 years. Would you like to know what I found? I pulled up my spreadsheet. In the past 24 months, you've spent $72,000 of my money. That's more than what you and Dad paid for my college tuition, plus interest. So no, I don't owe you anything anymore. The line went quiet. Then, without another word, Mom hung up. Almost on autopilot, I opened Facebook and typed in Lisa's name. I hadn't looked at her profile in months. I'd been too busy working, too focused on my own life. Now I scrolled through post after post, my anger growing with each swipe. There she was, posing in the $2,000 dress from Luxe Boutique, the one Mom had claimed was for her birthday. There was Lisa at some resort last month, lounging by a pool with a fancy cocktail. Photo after photo, parties, clubs, and restaurants I recognized from my bank statements. She was even wearing the expensive jewelry I'd unknowingly paid for, tagging herself at all the upscale places she visited with my money. I needed more information, so I called Aunt Marie, who had always been the family truth teller, the one person who never bought into the Lisa can do no wrong narrative. Aunt Marie, I need to ask you something, I said. Have you been to my parents' house lately? Have they done any repairs? She let out a bitter laugh. Repairs? The only thing that's changed is the house is getting worse. Your father won't even fix the broken step on the front porch. Why do you ask? I explained about the money I'd been sending, about the supposed repairs. With each word, Aunt Marie's sigh grew deeper. Oh, Sarah, she said finally, that money is not going to repairs. Lisa doesn't work, doesn't even look for jobs anymore, just parties all the time. She paused, then added, and now she's trying to drag my Jenny into that lifestyle too. Keeps inviting her to these wild parties, telling her how much fun it is to live free and easy. My stomach was already in knots, but what she said next made my blood run cold. There's something else you should know, Aunt Mary continued, her voice dropping. Jenny told me this in confidence, but you need to hear it. Lisa's been showing around a letter of recommendation, supposedly from you. Says she interned at your company under your supervision. Jenny saw it. It has your signature and everything. Lisa is planning to use it to apply at Carlton Industries. The room started spinning. A forged letter of recommendation with my signature. If Lisa got caught, and she would get caught, it wouldn't just be her reputation on the line. It would be mine. My company, everything I'd worked for, could be destroyed. I hung up with Aunt Mary and immediately called Carlton Industries' HR department. My hands were shaking as I explained the situation. I need to report a fraudulent letter of recommendation, I said. My sister is applying for a position using a forged letter in my name. I never wrote it, never signed it, and she has never worked at my company. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. 2 days later, my phone exploded with calls from my parents. When I finally answered, Mom's screaming voice nearly burst my eardrums. "How dare you sabotage your sister's career?" she shrieked. She was about to get that job at Carlton Industries. "Mom," she forged my signature. I tried to interject. "She's finally trying to make something of herself." Mom continued as if I hadn't spoken. "And you ruined it. You've always been jealous of her." I heard shuffling, then Dad's voice came on the line, angrier than I'd ever heard him. "Lisa's been crying for 2 days straight because of you," he growled. "Is that what you wanted? To hurt your sister? Well, congratulations. You're no daughter of mine. Consider yourself disowned." "Dad, she committed fraud." I protested. "If you ever want us to forgive you," he cut me off, his voice cold and calculating, "you'll need to start sending us more money. Much more than before. Maybe then, someday, we might consider forgiving you for what you've done to your sister." My father's words were the last straw. Years of manipulation, guilt, and unfairness crashed over me in that moment, and suddenly everything became crystal clear. "No," I said firmly into the phone. "I don't owe you anything anymore. I helped you selflessly, and you lied to me. If you need money so badly now, why don't you ask Lisa to help? She's the one you've been spending all that money on anyway." Before they could respond, I hung up. With shaking hands, I opened my banking app and permanently revoked my mother's access to my account. As I pressed the confirm button, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders and a new one settle in my stomach. I knew what was coming. The calls started the next morning. "How could you do this to us?" Mom's voice screeched through my voicemail. "After everything we've done for you, you selfish." Lisa's message followed. "You think you're so much better than everyone else with your fancy job and your perfect life." I deleted the messages without listening to the end, but they kept coming, day after day, text messages, voicemails, emails, all filled with insults, guilt trips, and demands to restore their access to my money, each one more desperate and angry than the last. I blocked their numbers, but they started calling from different phones. I blocked those too. A week into the marriage, Aunt Marie called. "Sarah, honey," she said gently, "I wanted to warn you. Your parents are calling everyone in the family. They're telling everyone what a terrible daughter you are, how you abandoned them in their time of need." She paused. "I know the truth, and so does Jenny. We've tried telling them wrong, but they won't listen. I just wanted you to know what they're doing." That was 3 months ago. Now my life has settled into a new normal. My savings account is growing again. It's amazing how quickly money accumulates when it's not being drained by others. I started seriously looking at apartments, going to viewings on weekends. Last week, I even met with a mortgage advisor. The calls have mostly stopped, though I still get the occasional message from a new number. I delete them without reading them now. Sometimes I wonder about my parents. If Dad's back is really getting worse, if Mom is still covering for Lisa's excesses. I wonder if Lisa ever tried to forge anyone else's signature, or if she's still living the high life on someone else's dime. I work, I save, and I spend time with friends who appreciate me for who I am, not what I can offer them. I'm learning to stop feeling bad about taking care of myself first. I honestly don't know if I will ever talk to my family again. Perhaps one day they'll realize what they did wrong, or perhaps I'll find it in my heart to forgive them, even if they don't. But for now, I'm focused on creating the life I want, one that isn't burdened by obligation, guilt, or other people's expectations.